The sun was just rising above the red earth of Enugu, casting long shadows across the compound as the morning mist lifted slowly like a reluctant veil. Birds chirped lazily on the guava tree behind the bungalow, and the aroma of akara and pap wafted through the open window from Mama Nkechi's roadside stall. Everything looked like a normal Saturday morning. But nothing was normal for Adama. She stood before the mirror in her one-bedroom flat in GRA, fixing her gold earring with shaking fingers. Her heart had not stopped racing since 3 a.m. when she woke up drenched in sweat, haunted by a strange fear she couldn't explain. "I just want to be sure, Ada," Obinna had said the night before, his voice calm, but his eyes carrying something that looked like worry. "Let's go for a genotype test. I know it's late, but before we print the wedding invitation cards." A decade. They had loved each other for 10 long years, from their university days in Succa, where she was the beautiful, quiet girl who never missed class, and he was the charming, ambitious young man studying engineering. Through thick and thin, they stayed together. She passed on jobs to stay close to him. He held her when her father died. They built dreams together, planned children's names, imagined life abroad, then back home in their own house in Lekki. Now a test? Still, Ada had agreed. They loved each other. Nothing could go wrong. Or so she thought. The hospital was quiet that morning, too quiet. The nurses smiled politely as they handed over their test results in a sealed envelope. "Please, wait for the doctor to interpret it," the lab technician said. But Obinna couldn't wait. He opened the envelope right there in the hallway. His eyes scanned the paper, and then he froze. Ada peered over his shoulder. One glance, and her knees buckled. Genotype, as. Obinna, as. The world became a blur. No sound, no breath, just pounding heartbreak in her ears. Tears flowed before she even realized it. Jesus. Jesus, no. Obinna, she gasped, clutching his shirt. This cannot be true. They must have made a mistake. He didn't say anything. His shoulders slumped. His head dropped. They sat on the hospital bench for almost 2 hours, crying, not speaking, just holding each other like people mourning the death of a child that had not been born. And in truth, that was exactly what had died, the future. Days turned into weeks. Ada stopped picking calls. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the paper. The cruel paper that shattered everything. But what she didn't know was that while she was nursing her grief, Obinna was moving on. Swiftly. Less than 2 months later, he stopped visiting. He stopped calling. One day, when she went to his flat to see him, she met another girl, tall, light-skinned, loud, wearing his t-shirt and boiling noodles in her kitchen. The betrayal was louder than the heartbreak. "Ada, I beg. I no fit do this drama right now. I moved on. We can't be together. You should try too," he said coldly. "Try." Her voice cracked. 10 years of my life, Obinna. 10 years. And you want me to try? He shrugged, unfazed. Ada walked out, tears streaming down her face. Her heart didn't just break, it bled. She cried every night after that. But every morning, she wore her strength like war paint and went to work. Her job at a logistics firm in Enugu was the only thing she had left, the only thing she could still control. Even when her friends whispered, "You're over 30, you should be married by now," she kept her head high. But her heart? Her heart wanted nothing more than to reverse time. To be 22 again. To not have wasted 10 years. Then, one rainy Thursday, the turn of her story came, quietly, like a whisper. She was standing in her office, waiting for her boss, when a visitor walked in. A tall man in a crisp white kaftan, with a beard so neat it looked like art. He introduced himself as Mr. Ibube Okonkwo, the CEO of a rising tech firm in Lagos. Ada welcomed him politely, offering a seat. Something about her composure, her smile, even in sadness, caught his attention. Days later, he returned. This time, to see her. That was the beginning of a story she didn't expect. A love born not from years of dating, but from kindness, strength, and grace in heartbreak. And as the pages turned in Ada's life, Obinna, once so sure of himself, would come to learn that not every woman stays broken. Some rise, stronger, brighter, and loved, finally, the way they truly deserve. The morning after that rainy Thursday came with unusual calm. For the first time in weeks, Adama did not wake up with tears stinging her eyes. She didn't dream of the wedding that would never happen, nor did she feel the familiar weight on her chest. There was still pain, yes, but that morning, the pain sat quietly in a corner, watching, not tormenting. She made herself a cup of ginger tea and sat by her window, looking out into the quiet street of Independence Layout. Children were already in their uniforms, skipping past puddles as they hurried to school. Life had not stopped, even though hers had once paused. Then she remembered him, Ibube. He had left a lasting impression, not just because of his expensive kaftan or that calm, measured voice, but because of the way he had looked at her. Like she mattered, like he saw something beyond the pain. It began with simple things. He returned to the office the following Monday, saying he came to drop off a file, but he lingered longer than necessary. He asked her about her day, commented on the book on her desk, Chinua Achebe's No Longer at Ease, and smiled when she said she loved African literature. Ada, can I take you out for lunch? Not as a business client, but as a man who would like to know you better. She was taken aback. No one had asked her that way in years. With respect, no rush, no pressure. She hesitated, but something in his sincerity made her nod. That lunch at Golden Valley Restaurant changed everything. Ibube was nothing like Obinna. He didn't brag. He didn't play mind games. He asked questions and actually listened. He laughed with his whole chest and didn't look uncomfortable when Ada didn't smile. He talked about his late mother, his struggles building his tech company from scratch, and his passion for community development. Ada found herself opening up too. About work, about life, but not about Obinna, not yet. Ibube didn't push. He respected her pace. Over the next few weeks, he became a regular part of her life, dropping by with flowers, calling to say good morning, sending her food when he knew she was working late. One evening, after work, he surprised her with a gift, a vintage wristwatch she had once admired on a fashion blog. She had mentioned it in passing, but he remembered. Ada held the box in her hand, tears brimming. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked softly. "Because you deserve to be seen," he said. And not just seen, cherished. Meanwhile, Obinna was spiraling. The new girlfriend, Ikaru, was nothing like Ada. She was flashy, fond of Instagram, and loved expensive things. He enjoyed the thrill for a while, showing her off at lounges and weddings. But then reality began to sink in. Ikaru had no patience. She didn't cook. She mocked his dreams. And when he once mentioned Ada in passing, she hissed loudly and called her the desperate one. One evening, during a heated argument about money, she stormed out. She didn't come back for 3 days. Obinna called, texted, begged. When she finally returned, she dropped a bomb. "I'm not interested in suffering. I married you because you had potential. But if this is all you are, I'm not doing this." Just like that, the mask fell. Back in Ada's world, the tide was turning. Ibube introduced her to his friends. He took her to Abuja for a business event. He even arranged for her to meet a director at a multinational company looking to expand in Enugu. A few weeks later, she got a new job offer. Double her current salary, better benefits, and an apartment in Lekki Phase 1, Lagos. It felt unreal. She had gone from tears on her pillow to being treated like royalty. At first, she hesitated. Was it too fast? But Ibube held her hand one evening under the stars at the Polo Park Mall rooftop and said, "You've suffered enough, Ada. Let the world be kind to you now." And for the first time in over a year, she believed she deserved that kindness. Then one Sunday morning, her phone rang. Obinna. Her hand shook. She hadn't heard from him in months. She let it ring out. But he called again, and again. When she finally picked, his voice was low, broken. "Ada, please. I need to see you." She met him later that week in an open-air cafe. He looked nothing like the man she once knew. His beard was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled. His eyes were tired. "I lost my job," he confessed. And Kiru, she left, packed her things and vanished. Ada stared at him, expressionless. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I made a mistake, Ada. You were everything. I didn't know it then, but I know now." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "And what do you want from me, Obinna?" He leaned forward, desperate. "I've done research. They said as an AS can marry if they follow the right medical procedures. IVF, genetic screening, pre-implantation diagnosis. Ada, we can still make it work. We're meant to be." Her heart clenched, not from longing, but from disbelief. "You're too late," she said gently. His face twisted. "You're seeing someone?" She nodded. "I'm engaged." The silence between them was deafening. He rose, staggering as if struck. You can't do this. We're bonded, Ada. We shared 10 years. And you threw it away, she cut in. You moved on, remember? I begged you. You didn't care then. You don't get to hold me back now. He opened his mouth to speak, but words failed him. Ada rose, picked up her handbag, and walked away, her heels clicking confidently against the pavement, each step shedding the last weight of Obinna. That night, in her Lagos apartment, she curled up beside Ibube on the couch, his arms wrapped around her. Are you okay? He asked softly. Yes, she whispered. And for the first time, she meant it. Lagos was nothing like Enugu. The air was thicker, louder, and pulsing with the kind of restlessness that made you either sink or soar. For Adanma, it was the beginning of a new rhythm, one that sounded nothing like heartbreak. Her apartment in Lekki Phase 1 overlooked the lagoon. Every morning, she stood by the balcony, a cup of tea in hand, watching as the sun painted the water in gold. She had never seen herself as a city woman, but here she was, rising, glowing, and thriving. Her new office, a tech-driven logistics firm headed by women, was everything she had dreamt of. Her role as head of strategy came with not just power, but respect. People listened when she spoke. Junior staff admired her. Senior executives praised her mind. And Ibube was her piece. He had proposed in the most unexpected way. It was on a Sunday afternoon, during a quiet boat cruise around Banana Island. She was wearing a simple peach sundress, her hair packed in a bun, her laughter light and unforced. He knelt, barefoot on the deck, and said, I don't want to fix you, Ada. I just want to walk beside you as you rebuild everything that was broken. The ring had a single diamond. Elegant, pure, just like her. She said yes with tears in her eyes and laughter on her lips. The wedding plans began immediately. Ada insisted on keeping it intimate, but Ibube's family, proud, wealthy, and loving, wouldn't hear of it. Adama, you're not just marrying Ibube, his mother had said warmly, holding her hands. You're becoming our Ada. We will celebrate you like the gift that you are. The venue was set, the Palms Event Center, Enugu, a symbolic gesture that took the celebration back to where her story began. The aso-ebi was royal blue with silver lace trimmings. Invitations were embossed in gold. Food vendors were booked from all over the East, from Abakaliki's famous goat meat pepper soup to Onitsha's native soups. But most importantly, Ada glowed like the bride she had always dreamed of being. In the middle of the preparations, Obinna resurfaced. Again, this time, not with arrogance, but with desperation. He called, texted, sent voice notes. He even showed up at her family home in Amabia, Anambra, during the traditional marriage rites. Her younger brother, Somedina, nearly punched him for disrespect. But Obinna insisted. I just want 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to see her. Ada came out, dressed in a wrapper and coral beads, her face calm but unreadable. Obinna looked at her like a man staring at a ghost of his own mistakes. You look beautiful, he said hoarsely. Thank you, she replied, her voice steady. Do you remember when we used to talk about our own wine-carrying ceremony? When your mother would dance out with the cup, and you'd look for me in the crowd? I remember, she said softly. I still love you. Ada blinked. No, you love the version of me that stayed behind. But that girl died, Obinna. She died when you walked away. I'm not that woman anymore. He fell to his knees. Ada, please, if there's still a part of you that cares. There is, she interrupted gently. But it's the part that forgives you, not the part that still wants you. Then she turned and walked back into the compound, leaving Obinna broken, surrounded by the echoes of traditional drums and the smell of palm wine. The wedding day arrived with the sky as blue as her geli. Ibube looked regal in his white agbada, his beard freshly trimmed, his cap sitting perfectly. Ada wore a flowing dress of hand-woven George fabric imported from ABA, her headpiece crafted with delicate ivory corals, her skin glowing with the touch of royalty. Dignitaries filled the seats. Laughter floated through the air like confetti. Traditional dancers performed ijadij, while the MC cracked jokes in fluent Igbo and Pidgin. Ibube's father performed the Igba Nkwu ceremony, presenting Ada's family with everything on the bride price list, and even more. When Ada stepped out, holding the calabash of palm wine to find her groom, the entire hall fell silent. She walked with grace, with strength, with a joy that could only come from healing. When she knelt to offer Ibube the drink, he took it, sipped, and whispered into her ear, "Thank you for choosing joy." The crowd erupted in ululation. She had finally arrived, not just at her wedding, but at her destiny. Back at Obina's one-room apartment in New Haven, he sat alone, scrolling through the wedding pictures on Instagram. He saw Ada smiling in Ibube's arms. He saw her dancing, laughing, looking freer than he had ever seen her. He dropped the phone. His heart was heavy, not just from loss, but from regret. He had everything, and he let it slip. As Ada and Ibube's flight took off to Zanzibar for their honeymoon, she looked out the window and smiled. Not at the clouds, not at the sun, but at the woman she had become. Not defined by pain, but by power, by grace, by love, the kind that saw her, chose her, and never let her go. Zanzibar was a dream. White sands, crystal blue waters, the rhythm of the waves whispering blessings on newlyweds. Ada and Ibube spent their honeymoon basking in simplicity, barefoot dinners by the beach, long walks under moonlight, laughter without restraint, and conversations that danced between the past and the future. But somewhere between the sunsets and the soft music of the tide, a new fire lit inside Ada. She was no longer just the woman who had survived heartbreak. She was the woman who had conquered it. And now, she was ready to build. Upon returning to Lagos, Ada resumed her new job with fresh vision. Her leadership style, a blend of empathy, firmness, and innovation, quickly made her a beloved figure within the company. In board meetings, she wasn't just heard, she was respected. Her influence spread beyond office walls. She began hosting mentorship sessions for young women, mostly fresh graduates and early career ladies, teaching them how to prepare for the professional world, how to say no to toxicity, how to rise even when love fails. "I am not a motivational speaker," she told them one Saturday. "I am simply a woman who refused to let heartbreak bury her." Her words echoed like thunder. Marriage with Ibube was not without its challenges. No fairy tale ever is. They argued sometimes. Over small things. Over big things. She hated how he sometimes forgot to respond to texts. He couldn't understand her need for alone time after difficult workdays. But the difference now was, she had married a man who fought with her, not against her. Whenever they disagreed, they always found their way back to the center. Not with ego, but with humility. And love. Endless love. One quiet Thursday evening, Ada returned home earlier than usual. She had closed work early because of an uneasy feeling she couldn't shake. Something inside her felt different. She stood in front of the mirror, observing her face. There was a glow she couldn't explain. An hour later, a test confirmed it. She was pregnant. Ada sat on the bathroom floor, hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes, not from fear, but from overwhelming grace. From as to as, they had made plans, spoken with doctors, prepared carefully for this very day. And now it had come. Ibube returned from a meeting and found her waiting on the couch, holding a tiny pair of white baby shoes. He paused. "Ada, is this what I think?" She nodded slowly, smiling through tears. He knelt before her, rested his head on her lap, and wept softly. For joy, for love, for the miracle of their new beginning. They named their daughter Chimamanda. My God will not fail. Her birth was smooth, healthy, beautiful, no complications, no SS. She had Ada's eyes and Ibube's dimples, and from the moment she arrived, she became a testimony that love, the right kind, does more than heal. It builds. It restores. Years passed. Ibube's tech firm became one of the fastest-growing companies in Africa. He was featured in Forbes Africa. He gave credit to his wife at every opportunity. "She held me together when I didn't even know I was falling apart," he once said during a televised interview. "She's not just my wife, she's my anchor." Ada's mentorship program evolved into a full nonprofit organization, the Ada Foundation. Its mission? Helping women navigate career, heartbreak, and healing. She wrote a memoir that became a bestseller, Rising from AS. The story of the girl who refused to stay broken. It touched thousands. And as for Obina, he eventually found a job again, though nothing is stable. He married someone else, a quiet woman who didn't remind him of Ada. But whenever he saw Ada on TV, in magazines, or heard her voice during interviews, a silence filled his heart. He had been her whole world, but she became her own universe. One afternoon, years after everything, Ada sat with her daughter in their large garden in Ikoyi. Mommy, little Chimamanda said, playing with petals. Were you ever sad before you met Daddy? Ada smiled. Yes, my darling. Very sad. Why? Because sometimes life gives us the wrong story first. But the good ones, the true ones, always find their way back to us. She looked up at the sky, calm, endless, and whispered a quiet, thank you, to the God who had rewritten her ending. Because in the end, Ada hadn't just found love again. She had found herself. And this time, she wasn't letting go. The sun was setting behind the Lagos skyline, painting the clouds in warm hues of orange and rose gold. In the serene calm of her balcony garden, Adama sat on a cushioned wicker chair, barefoot, sipping zobo from a wine glass and watching Chimamanda chase butterflies between the pots of hibiscus and scent leaf. She was older now, wiser, softer even, not because life had become easier, but because she had become stronger. And peace, as she had come to understand, wasn't the absence of storms. It was learning how to dance in the rain without breaking. It had been 10 years since that hospital corridor. 10 years since a paper changed her life. 10 years since love turned to loss and loss to purpose. 10 years since she looked into Obina's tear-filled eyes and said goodbye, not just to him, but to everything he represented. She was in her early 40s now, still radiant, still driven, and still deeply in love. Ibube walked out from the study, barefoot like always, holding a small photo album. Look what I found, he said, smiling as he handed it over. Ada opened it and chuckled softly. It was their wedding album. There she was, 10 years younger, standing tall in her royal blue George fabric, eyes bright with healing, hand in hand with the man who had rewritten her ending. Do you remember how I nearly fainted when you took too long to say I do? Ibube teased. Ada laughed. I was soaking in the moment. After everything, I needed to be sure it wasn't a dream. He knelt beside her chair and kissed her hand. It was real. It still is. The years had come with their own tests. Ibube's company had once been on the brink of collapse after a policy shift by the government. There were months when they had to cut costs, downsize, and fight tooth and nail to stay afloat. Ada stood by him, not with panic, but with presence. And when Ada's NGO, the Ada Foundation, was falsely accused of financial mismanagement by a bitter former employee, it was Ibube who stood with her through the hearings, the media scandal, the tears, and the eventual public vindication. Together, they were unshakable. Chimamanda was now 9, bright, inquisitive, and full of life. She loved science, storytelling, and was always asking her mother how she met her father. So one day, Ada told her, not the painful version, but the powerful one. She told her about a time when she thought life was over, when love betrayed her, when people told her she was too old, too broken, too late. And then she told her about Ibube, how he saw her when she couldn't even see herself, how he didn't save her, but gave her the room to save herself. One Saturday evening, Ada was invited to speak at a prestigious women's conference in Abuja. Dressed in an elegant wine-colored wrapper with silver embroidery, she stepped up to the podium, looked out at the sea of women, young, old, married, divorced, single, and took a breath. I stand before you, she began, not as a woman who has it all figured out, but as one who refused to let pain define her story. At 31, I thought I was finished. 10 years of love disappeared overnight. I was broken. I was ass. He was ass. Society said that was the end. But here I am, not because it was easy, but because I rose. The hall went silent. Some women wiped tears. Others nodded slowly, their faces reflecting their own stories. Ada continued, your value is not tied to who stays or who leaves. Your worth is not buried in your genotype, your age, or your past. You are enough, whole, loved, and deserving of a beautiful ending. Not because you begged for it, but because you were brave enough to begin again. The applause was thunderous. Ibube and Chimamanda stood in the front row, clapping proudly. That night, as they returned to their hotel suite, Ada sat by the window, looking out at the Abuja skyline. Lights twinkled below like a sea of stars. Ibube came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. You were born to do this, he said softly. Do what? Shine, even in the dark. She turned, rested her head against his chest, and closed her eyes. I'm glad I broke, she whispered. Why? He asked. because it made me grow. That was the truth of her story. Adama wasn't just the girl who lost love. She was the woman who found power. She built a legacy. She built other women. She built a life that was louder than heartbreak. And in the end, when her name was mentioned in rooms she once only dreamed of entering, it was not in pity. It was an honor. Adama's journey reminds us of one timeless truth, that no matter how deep the hurt, how long the wait, how broken the beginning, you can still have a beautiful ending.